in order to make this work with the AI that's tech stacks that are coming, the buzzword of 2025 is going to be agentic. You're going to be sick of hearing that word. It's a fancy word for agency. And all that is, realistically, is a way to give AI technology, whether it is generative AI, whether it's a reasoning engine, whether it's a neural network or a good old-fashioned convolutional neural network, whether it's a transformer network, a diffusion network, a transformer diffusion network, it doesn't matter what it is. You are saying, hey, tech stack, don't do a task for me, accomplish a goal.
Hi, I'm Greg Stewart, CEO of MMA Global, the international nonprofit trade association for CMOs who are focused on architecting a new future of marketing.
I'm Rex Briggs, an author, market researcher, measurement inventor, and entrepreneur. Hey, it's 2025, new year, new Greg?
Yeah, I don't know, Rex. Let's not get too carried away here. I mean, I did have to go to CES to kick off the year. It's really the event that most marketers, I think, just hate and resent every year to have to get to it to kick off.
Yeah, I sat this one out and just instead read Shelly's blog and kept track of it that way. And I'm pretty excited for this year. I think we were going to see AI mature quite a bit. You know, live companies have had some time to build on the large language models now. So I think it's going to be a pretty exciting year. And I'm really excited to see what Shelly has to say about CES. You know, of course, predicting the future of tech is probably never a good idea, and it might be even harder, I think, with AI. But I think we still try. And one place that the industry leaders go to find out what's coming next is the Consumer Electronics Show, or CES, in Las Vegas every year. Greg, tell me a little bit about what you saw there, and let's bring in our guest.
Yeah, listen, I'm sort of, you know, I sort of half jokingly say we kind of hate the event, and yet we all still go there. So I don't know how you hate something you still show up to all the time. But listen, we had a good thing, and here's kind of what happened for the listeners. MMA Global did an event with Michael Cass's new business, 3C Ventures, and also today's guest, Shelly Palmer, as you're going to know. So it was, and if you don't know, for as long as I can remember in recorded history around CES, Shelly Palmer, who, by the way, is professor at Newhouse School at Syracuse, also CEO of Palmer Group. I mean, I think most of us know. Pretty all-around smart guy, I would say, if I could say that when he's not on the line. But he actually kicks off CES with giving a recap of everything you're about to see. Like, he gives context to it, especially for the marketing committee. And I think in the past, I've been in rooms 1,500 people. I mean, we really would go out of our way to make sure and show up for that. So this year we did something a little bit differently. Like I said, MMA and Michael Caston and company, we kind of got together with Shelly and did a little event with Mark Cuban and Linda Yaccarino and Jeffrey Katzenberg and a few others. And so I pointed out to the audience there that he didn't really have time to do a full-on recap of AI and, you know, to have him come do it here for the Decoding AI for Marketing listeners. So with that, Shelly, we're super excited to have you this morning.
Thanks so
How
much.
you doing, Shelly?
Good to see you guys.
Yeah.
It's the morning after.
It's the morning after.
Is there a hangover, or are you feeling energized and ready to run the 10K?
I am absolutely energized. It was a great week. It was a long week for sure, but it was a great week.
It really was, Shelly. You know, it's funny. It's one of those things. I have like a bad attitude on the plane, and all the way up into the taxi. When I get to the taxi, I go, okay, like, you know, change my attitude. It's all fine. It's going to be good. I'm going to see everybody I know. You know, and the serendipity meetings were phenomenal, as they always are. And then even the meetings I had in person, which you have so much struggle to. So it's really not all that bad. So I guess, you know.
Well, Shelly, one of the things you do that I love is you think about, as you go around the CES, you talk about, you know, what is the future's already here. It's just unevenly distributed. And you can tell by the press release whether or not this is going to affect us this year, next year, the year after. I think you use whether they price something or not as one of the leading indicators. Talk to us about that a little bit and tell us what you saw that really impressed you, that's coming sooner rather than later.
So Rex, this was the strangest CES I have ever been to, and I have been to all of them. So that's saying something. In fact, I've been going to CES since it was Comdex. So I mean, not to
wow.
You know, age myself or date myself. So this was this, and when I got there Saturday, because you know we do our floor tours and executive briefings, and so like there's a certain amount you can learn before the show, but you really have to walk around because everybody's got stuff embargoed and, covered with cloth, and their product managers aren't talking unless you go there and you see them in person. That's, oh, okay, come here. I'll sneak you in while we're doing this. So I can understand a little bit about what's happening in advance. And as I walked through the show Saturday and Sunday before it opened, I was really confused because nothing made sense to me. And by Sunday afternoon, I actually understood what was happening. For every year prior to this, manufacturers had a North Star that was very specific. They had a vertical or verticals that were very specific. I make TVs. It's going to be HD this year. And therefore, everybody had their version of an HD set. So you had whoever the leader was, it was hard to tell. It would always appear to be the biggest company. And then everybody with their version of it at a different price or some modifications that made theirs the best. So it's like, ours is flatter, ours is brighter, ours has better battery life, ours is whatever. Yeah, whatever. But there were always very, very homogeneous tracks for everything. Here, you went from booth to booth and exhibit to exhibit. And what I was seeing was each company's vision of the future through the lens of engineering. So this is what the AI future will look like in our future. And so then you go to Sony and you see that. And then you go to Samsung and you see their vision of the future. You go to LG and you see their vision of the future. And you go, every place you went, I went, every single booth, they were telling you that they had envisioned 5 years out, 10 years out, and this is the path that they felt we should all take to get there, or they would take to get us there. Now, this is the first time ever that I've seen that much independent thought at CES, and it was refreshing. First confusing, and then I was like, wow, if you take a minute and open your mind to this, and you walk from place to place, it's like, okay, Sony thinks that this is going to happen. And Samsung thinks that this is going to happen.
So it's interesting because it's covering, AI allows you to cover so much beachhead. There's so many different directions you can go with it. So it's kind of exciting that what you're describing is that teams independently, without being able to do groupthink yet, had to do their own homework. And then this is what they came up with. I think we'll see the groupthink come out in a year or two.
Oh, my goodness. Of course we will. But this time,
yeah, tell us about what you saw. What kind of got you excited in the specifics?
Absolutely. All these exhibits were planned a year ago, built 6 months ago, and installed 4 weeks ago. So there was no time for them to adapt to O3. There was no time for them to adapt to DeepSeek V3 or even Notebook. Like they had no time to adapt to the software that is coming a million miles an hour. So everybody's thought process was back at a time when you might have when you had to have an original thought. You might not even have to right now. Like it may be clear.
Hey, Shelly, what is? By the way, I want to come back to what DeepSeek is, but go ahead, finish the thought. Sorry.
No, so what I was to answer Rex's question. So, for example, Sony was showing off a lot of pre-visualization tools, motion capture, robotic cameras, their version of the volume. They had done half the booth was about partnerships and IP, their Columbia, movie studio IP, and their. And then, of course, a little bit about their PS5 and this cross-pollination across their tech and their IP. That was half the booth. The other side of the booth was about what they believe the creator economy will evolve into. Now, if you think about it, Sony began the creator boom with their mirrorless cameras and the kit that goes along with that, right? You had... Canon kind of invented prosumer years ago with the 5D, and you kind of got into this place where you could make cinematic quality video out of a handheld camera for 10 grand, as opposed to having just the lenses were 40,000 a piece back then. So they cut the cost of holding production tools in your hand way down. Sony took that a step further. Their mirrorless cameras, they'll put an Alpha 6,000 camera in your hand for $700. The thing is a 4K camera. You put a real lens on that, you're in business, and every YouTuber does that. The setup I'm in right now is that it's a 6000 series Alpha camera with a diffused light directly above and a microphone here, and this is what YouTube is in 4K. So they own that, and they didn't show any of it. Nothing. Why? Because they know that it's going to go the next level now. So what they showed instead was. And again, it's a vision of the future. You can either agree or not agree. They showed 4 stations on a stage: an art station, a music station, an animation station, And what they were doing was saying that in the future, and they kept saying 10 years in the future, which I don't even know how anyone conceive of 10. I can't think about 10 months in the future right now.
Yeah.
They're saying 10 years in the future, you won't. AI is not going to do this. You're going to have 4 human collaborators that all have these consoles, and they'll be able to sort of create full videos the way a band creates music. It's like, it's clever, it's interesting, and it breaks a Shelly Palmer rule. And I hate to talk about myself in third person, but I've got a very specific rule when it comes to this stuff. It's like, do not look to the future through the lens of the present. Just don't, ever. And that's exactly what this entire exhibit was about, looking at the future through the lens of the present. With what we know, anchored in the things we understand, anchored in the workflows we've been doing for 100 years, I'm now going to think about what 10 years from now would look like, as opposed to you're basically going to have a Neuralink in your brain 10 years from now, and you go, and everybody sees it, and they never have to realize it because it's Neuralink chip to Neuralink chip. Yeah. I don't know that that's going to happen either. But at the end of the day, somewhere between what I just said and what they showed is what is going to happen. What they showed absolutely won't. Yeah. So the rest of their booth was modern technology that just is interesting for, better use of Unreal Engine, better use of cameras to make 3D models, better use of sensors to do motion capture, and then they had the absolute state-of-the-art in motion control, none of which are consumer or even prosumer tools, none of them. So they sort of abandoned creator economy, saying, we know it's going to be generative. The entire booth just surrendered their entire creator business to, you're going to type in, I want this, and you're going to get it. I think what they've acknowledged is the transition, and look, I preach this culture of continuous adaptation needs to evolve now. Yeah. And I think Sony did an amazing job, prescient job of saying, we know the parts that you're gonna need, the things you will have to have, the physical kit you're gonna need. And then we're guessing at like what some future collaborative stuff would be just to show you we're thinking. But we know for a fact that whatever our mirrorless cameras do now and whatever the workflow and process is that you're using for YouTube, that's asked and answered. We know that that's going to be fine. Yeah. They didn't feel like they needed to sell me that, which I thought was fantastic because they're the world leader in it anyway. So the booth was, I thought, when I went there originally, I'm like, what's this? The place is empty. But by the time I realized that the chain of thought, to use a term of art that doesn't apply, the way they thought about it, I was really, really, really tickled with the intellectual exercise that they had gone through. And by the way, Samsung did in their own way, did exactly the same thing. You walk in the Samsung booth, they were talking about interconnectivity and Samsung Things, and that's their version of IoT. Mm-hmm. And really what they were talking about is making everything, orchestrating everything in your world. They know that you have things, now they want you to orchestrate them because they feel like the software is available, and as coding becomes, basically you type and get code, as software just becomes something that you don't need an engineer to do all the time. Right. They know that you're going to be able to, for the first time ever, third parties will orchestrate for you. Samsung wants to say, we're going to make it that much easier. Like, we're going to give you all the things you can orchestrate, and we can give you a connected world through the lens of Samsung. And then they were pushing sustainability and their responsibility to the planet. And it was also like, hey, where are the TVs? No TVs. Where are the refrigerators? Yeah, we got one. It does stuff. But really what's important is not the refrigerator, which we think is important. What we really think is important is how you will connect that to the life you live so that the value of that refrigerator exceeds just keeping your food cold. I just love the way and by the way, that may be wrong. That's the part I love.
Continue your world tour because you've hit Japan
but I want to
and
I
Korea.
want to come back to marketers, though. I want to come back to sort of what you saw for marketers, because this is around content and media that you're talking about here, Shelley, right? I mean, these.
No, not really, Greg. I think it's all about marketing because I think 100% of this. Look, what we used to do is we still do. We do these executive briefings and floor tours, and we take leadership teams and marketing organizations around the floor, both live, and then we do them virtually. Like for about 2 months, we do these CES virtual tours. The reason, and Rex said this in the intro, what CES does brilliantly is it gives you 3 crystal balls, or 1 crystal ball with 3 timelines on it. As Rex said, if it has a price, it's coming out next Christmas. If it doesn't have a price but it's fully packaged, it's 2 Christmases from now. And if it doesn't have a price and it's not really packaged well, but it looks kind of cool, it's a concept that may or may not ever happen. And we could reliably understand anywhere from 12 to 36 months going walking CES for the past 25 years. This year, and last year too, this year all bets are off. You can't tell anything about the future through that lens. But why was it important for marketers then? It was important because back in the day, whatever was going on here was going to empower consumers a certain way, and that technological empowerment was going to change their behavior. And another one of my favorite phrases is, technology is meaningless unless it changes the way we behave. And so if you see a piece of kit and you don't go, I'd use it that way, or my kid would use it that way, or my business will use it that way. Then as a marketer, with your subject matter expertise, you just keep walking. It's like, it's obviously interesting, but it's not going to be interesting. It's not going to change my customers. It's not going to change my workflow and process. So here, when you think about it, Greg, while this was far more cerebral than any other CES, because it wasn't about bright, shiny objects or physical pieces of stuff, as a marketer, you walk through Sony and you realize that there is a behavior change that's pretty profound on the cusp. We're going to see this stratification of really hardcore professional workflow. Then there's accessibility, like their Mocopi product, the motion capture product. It's $500. You need an Android phone and $500. You get 6 sensors. All of a sudden, you're making real-time animation.
That's exciting for consumers. Yeah, that's
YouTubers
amazing.
are going to
How
go
many
crazy
YouTubers-
with
yeah,
that.
exactly. Yes.
You get Omniverse or Unreal Engine. You combine it with some Gen AI for the backplates. All of a sudden, you're making some really interesting content, and it's a $500 bill. It's cheaper than the camera. It's cheaper than the lights. So all of a sudden, like you walk through and say, okay, we'll see as a marketer next level production, but I don't need it for them, just for the consumers. Inside my organization, I can now pre-visualize all kinds of stuff. Right. I can have a couple of people in my organization sit down at Unreal Engine or an Omniverse. I can take one conference room on any floor and say, hey, let's go do a previs on the commercial we want to shoot, and literally build it. And instead of storyboards, like, here it is. Everything about everything is changed from a marketing point of view. If your job is communication, the communication tools have vastly shifted. Then if you go into, and I'll just keep walking down, you go into Samsung, which was close to Sony, and you say, well, what can a marketer learn there? And it's like, what the marketer's going to learn there is that there is a consumer behavior that is going to change, and that is all of a sudden things that used to only work together through Alexa voice services, or things that only used together through Zigbee or Z-Wave, that were really hard, or Bluetooth, that were really hard to make work, and where, a lot of people would have immense difficulty getting their phone to see their car and their car to see their phone.
100%.
This stuff's going to work now. Matter Alliance, boom. You just turn these two things on. Now they're connected. All of a sudden, things that didn't used to really connect well they connect through your phone. You've got a Gen AI interface, a voice interface that really understands you, agentic AI tools that will be able to go and make each of these things do what they're supposed to do when they're supposed to do them. That is a behavior shifting technology. You can't see it in front of you. Nobody was demonstrating it, but every component part was in front of you. So if you knew what to look at, it's like when they put the RealSense chip, years ago, they put the RealSense chip out at Intel, when Intel used to have a floor exhibit. And it was this one little chip in a glass case. And I brought every single marketing team over there. I said, see this? You're getting 3 cameras in 2 years. And what that's going to mean is the camera will be able to have a spatial understanding. It will give you bokeh. You will have a tape measure in the phone. And people are like, you'll be able to do pre-visualization, like put an object on a counter in your house. All of that's coming off of this chip. And people are like, that chip is a yes. As soon as they sell this chip to the phone makers, this is going to change the way phones work.
I happened to be standing by that booth when you walked through and did that at that year of CES. It was several years ago, and Intel had just bought also a goggle company that had that was doing displays, heads-up displays. So when you're skiing down, you can see how fast you're going down the slope, or see your friends. Somehow they killed that business. I don't know why they did or how they did. But Greg took off his glasses, but we all have glasses on. Tell us about how that's going to change the kind of the screenless future and what you're seeing there, and if you think that that's real or if you think that that's not going to happen.
Yeah, what's your take on the smart glass things, Shelly?
So there are 2 complete smart glass schools of thought. They are First of all, for those of you who like word salad and lots of initialisms and acronyms, there's AR, VR, XR, and MR, augmented reality, virtual reality, extended reality, and mixed reality. Those are the 4 flavors of things you can do with some kind of headgear. The 2 main kinds of headgear are good old-fashioned glasses that are brought to you by Meta, Ray-Ban, and others. Direct knockoff. TCL has Ray Neo. I mean, literally, it's a direct knockoff. But that's one school of thought. And then the other school of thought looks like Apple Vision Pro, the full-up virtual reality headset.
Yeah.
That can be in 2 modes. It can either be you're sensory deprived and living in a virtual world brought to you by whoever is bringing you the software, or you can see some augmentation to the world around you as you see through it. So both schools of thought are suffering right now from the physical reality of battery limitations. There's only so much time you can wear one of these before the batteries run out. The Apple headset has a much bigger battery because it's a bigger headset. The Ray-Bans have a smaller battery, but they use less because they don't have a heads-up display. They're basically transducers and cameras. The lens and in the Ray-Bans can be prescription. You can use transition lenses or make them a sunglass. So it's got some utility as actual glasses for your day-to-day work. You can play Spotify. It will listen and translate, so you can talk to someone who doesn't speak your language and vice versa. Not to put too fine a point on this, you could do this with AirPods Pro. Also, they have microphones because they're noise canceling, so you don't need eyeglasses to do that. You can do that with earbuds and AirPods. But notwithstanding, there you add the capability of looking at a sign in a foreign language, looking at a menu in a foreign language, and having it read to you in a language you understand. Now, there are far more things you can do with these before they have to get heads-up displays going in a pair of glasses. The problem is you need a battery in here and a big CPU in here and probably a GPU. And at the moment, they're all tethered to phones. You have to have the horsepower of the phone connected to the glasses. I always think about Darth Vader and his heads-up helmet, his helmet with all the display inside, or the stormtroopers in Star Wars with the same thing. And they're both, Darth Vader and the stormtroopers are wearing these massive bandoliers. And originally, when I watched the original Star Wars a million years ago, I thought they were ammunition in the bandoliers. No, they were batteries.
They're battery packs.
They're batteries.
So you don't think that's going to change marketing in the next year?
No, but
or
I
so
think
because
I
it's
think
just
if
slow?
somebody in the fashion world, like if Armani or LVMH make really, really fashionable battery bandoliers,
So I've got to
golden.
create a Tesla battery in order for me to sort of.
if
Shelley,
you don't
but-
mind carrying a Tesla
but
battery,
wait,
yeah.
no, Shelly, just a minute. Here, let's go off here. Do you have Do you have a pair of Meta glasses yet?
I do. Yeah, they're all over the place. I got them.
I have. I like them.
I love them.
I like them.
I
I
love
think
mine.
it's people ask me because I was wearing I have my as prescription glasses, so they've now just become my de facto. I think it's an excellent first generation product.
No question.
It's first gen. Like they finally got it right. It's so much of this stuff, and I buy everything just do like you do too. And it's like so many times it's like it's the rabbit thing from last year is still sitting here. I never even did get the damn thing to work. But it's like I love. I think finally we're seeing a glimpse of that. And so, but you're right. Once you put display then with no battery life, then it's kind of a.
So
it's
look,
dead
at the
now.
end of the day, these 2 schools of thought are really different. One is that you are augmenting your world. So the Meta Ray-Bans augment your world, and they haven't gone as far as they can go. You could add binaural microphones that would allow you to understand spatial audio around you the way that you can with AirPods, and you could interface that. It's not the kit that's important; it's how you would integrate that into the software and what that would do for you. There's so many places they can take it, and I'm sure they're on a path to doing all of that, especially with the advances in AI and Llama being such a great model. I'm very confident, but the school of thought there is I am walking through the world, and this kit is going to augment my reality. I'm going to have a more enriched experience by navigating the world. Apple Vision Pro and all of the VR, virtual reality, or even the VR AR headsets, the big ones, they expect you to be seated or standing in a harness. For Apple, it's an entertainment and or the office, right? It's either it's the infinite monitor and or a giant movie screen or a little bit of both. Yeah. When I put on my Apple Vision Quest, 2 things happen. Not Vision Quest. When I put on my Apple Vision Pro, Meta Quest, either of those. When I put on my virtual reality kit, whichever one it's going to be, Specifically Apple, though. I'm always sad when I take off my Apple Vision Pro because I go from this fantasy world brought to you by the designers at Apple to like my regular office. The problem is I can't keep it on for more than 45 minutes to an hour because it's heavy
Right.
and
Yeah.
it hurts my neck because because it has great everything. It's just a heavier kit. They will, because they're Apple, make it smaller and smaller and smaller and more efficient. But what do we really need to have happen here? And everybody's on the path to this. Incremental innovations, faster processor, longer battery life, better screen, all the little incremental things that everybody's going, oh, there was nothing new at CES. Like, hold on, folks. It was a ton new. Everything was 1% faster, 1% thinner, 1% longer lasting, 1% more energy efficient. It's like, over time, that's going to get everything piled into here, which is what we desperately need. I mean, when you think
And that
about
feels like that will change marketing a lot when you have that different display, which is why I was asking about
When
it.
you have access to a display
Yeah,
all the time.
I tried
marketers
the-
love white space, and
That's right.
inside
Well,
of my glasses is a big white
so-
space.
That's right. I had the Vuix one, which was like 7 years ago, and I walked around, and it worked for about 45 minutes, and you could take pictures, and you could see the video, and you could see some information displayed up there, and I was doing it as a thought exercise to think about how would marketing be different if what you were instantly seeing on your screen could be influenced by your location and where you're at or what you're seeing. Frankly, I think Meta's play is a little bit of how do they collect data that will help them with embodiment and multimodal. So I think that's kind of why they're doing it.
So you just took me where I wanted to go. Let me throw ice water on all of this.
Okay.
Samsung has a product. They have a refrigerator with some sensors in it, and it will identify 37 different staple food items. And they made a deal that they announced a week before CES with Instacart, where it would look inside your refrigerator and then add the missing items to your Instacart account and order them for you agentically. You could actually train it on other items, but it comes with 37 items it automatically recognizes. Which begs the question, from a consumer marketing perspective, from a consumer behavior and a marketing perspective, who gets to hold that data? Who gets to keep that data? What am I sharing with whom and how? It's one thing, and it's interesting as a marketer, if you think about it, it's one thing to let Tim Cook allow Tim Cook to allow the Apple operating system or ecosystem to take your data in, assuming it stays behind secure enclave, it's encrypted and it's really yours. And now if the phone is AI ready, and if I can run either a small language model or a large language model or a large concept model or any kind of agentic tools in here, and it stays here, and whether it's connected to my glasses or just connected to the phone or just the AirPods, doesn't matter. At some point, if this is my data that no one else gets to see, and I make that data actionable using whatever AI tool or a set of tools, whatever AI tech stack is available, great. But I am in no way ready to share that kind of personal identifiable information with Samsung. And so I need, that makes it useless to a marketer. If you give me the privacy settings I need, so in my Galaxy 25, which I'll announce later this month, which will be their flagship, Samsung's flagship Android phone, all right, they have Knox, which is their security system. They will keep all of my data behind Knox. Samsung, like Apple, has a watch. They've got their Samsung Health. So we have two competing systems. Outside the United States, everything's mostly Android, and inside the United States, high-end phones are mostly iPhones and Apple Watches. So these are the two big ecosystems that are collecting every ounce of data about us. To make that actionable, someone must give you permission as a marketer. Now, what we haven't talked about is that it's great to have all the stuff that this may do or that may do. In order to make this work with the AI tech stacks that are coming, the buzzword of 2025 is going to be agentic. You're going to be sick of hearing that word. It's a fancy word for agency. And all that is, realistically, is a way to give AI technology, whether it is generative AI, whether it's a reasoning engine, whether it's a neural network or a good old-fashioned convolutional neural network, whether it's a transformer network, a diffusion network, a transformer diffusion network, it doesn't matter what it is. You are saying, hey, tech stack, don't do a task for me. accomplish a goal. The goal might be tell my kid a bedtime story. The goal might be buy me an airline ticket. The goal might be get my laundry done. No matter what the goal is, it will be a goal, an entire goal. It will either learn to do this from your behaviors because you've set it up so it can learn from your data, or, which has nothing to do with generative AI or people stealing your data, that is a tech stack looking at your data with your permission, figuring out what it is you do, the way the Facebook feed or the TikTok feed figures out what you like, and giving you locally what you like. But it's got to stay local. All of that sounds great unless you're a marketer, in which case it should absolutely fill you with fear and send shivers down your spine, because they're going to, me, Shelly Palmer, you, Greg Stewart, there's no way in the world you open this up and you let XYZ marketer touch that data set.
Well, on the
No
other
way.
side is that the marketer's
Never.
experience of your interactions end up getting embedded in the large language model to where they, like, for example, I've got a bunch of food allergies, and so I wanted to make some hollandaise sauce without dairy. And, ChatGPT does a great job giving me, an altered recipe. And then, I let them know that I had an emulsion blender and it adjusted it immediately or whatever. But embedded in that was the type of food I eat, the type of home appliances I have, and so forth. And that, combined with all the other information that it's beginning to add to memory, gives it a really interesting insight on who I am as a consumer and
So
what I eat
when
in my
that is
diet. Yeah.
right, when
And marketers
that's
don't have access to that anymore.
when that's stateful and stays available as a newly informed dynamic database that the tech stack can look at, because it's not one model anymore. Now it's a multi-agent system. There's a lot of AI models doing a lot of different things in your phone, and truthfully in the cloud. Like, it's a family of things that are together. Yeah, it knows all of that. So here's what happens if you're a marketer. I'm now going to present as a bot, not an ad ID. I'm going to present as a thing that goes out in the world and seeks to accomplish a goal. The example I like to use is probably the first one that's going to happen, although I could be completely wrong, but something like this is going to be first. You guys know I do like 1 billion speaking engagements a year. I'm always on an airplane. My wife is like saying she's going to have my mail forwarded to Terminal 4 at JFK. It's like I'm just on that many planes. And I'm a prince about it. Like, I have a brown M&M rider, and it goes like this. I only sit in aisles 2 through 4. I only sit on the aisle. I only fly during the day, and every ticket has to be refundable because clients constantly change schedules. So there's no way I can buy like the cheapest ticket. I have to buy the ticket that you can get your money back and change it without any like change fees and nonsense. Now, I could tell that to my admin. I could tell that to an agentic system. I'm not going to have to, because the agent, I assume it's going to be Siri, but it may not be, something that I deploy on my own or I decide to sign up for, is going to learn this. Now what's going to happen? At some point, it's going to go out and make when I book an engagement, it's going to know it's been calendared. When that gets calendared, it's going to either just give me options where I approve it or just go and buy it ultimately.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I don't think marketers realize that disintermediation is happening again. It happened with the internet, and it's happening again. And it's going to happen with the large language models or with Apple or with Samsung, re-intermediating the relationships because they'll have more data and information. I mean, even right now, last night I was watching a TV show with my wife, and I hit pause and went back. And it's because I'm getting old and deaf, and I couldn't hear what they said, and I thought it was important. It automatically added closed caption to it. And I'm like, wow, it already learned that that's what happens when I rewind by 30 seconds or a minute, is that I'm going to add closed caption because I didn't hear what has happened. I thought that was interesting because that was just the latest software update on my smart TV, right?
And
So
ultimately,
you just
Rex,
multiply that by 1,000, and that's where we're at the end of next year.
That's my point. So as a marketer, what I'm looking for now, for the first time, I think, in a long time, because the last time we did this, it was when Silicon Valley was and the VC world was starting at the beginning of like the first digital transformation. Mm-hmm. I think we're going to have corp dev like we haven't had it in 20 years. I think we're going to have to go and make deals with the hyperscalers and the foundational model builders. I think that there are going to be an endless number of startups that are going to try and orchestrate all these tools together. And I think people should be very cautious about the hype in the press. everybody's talking about, large language models have hit a wall. They're not going to get any better. And, this law of diminishing returns is set in. I'm going to just say something that I don't think is controversial, but a lot of people don't really think about. If today, right this minute, right whenever you're listening, everything about generative AI was as good as it was ever going to get ever, if progress stopped dead,
Yep.
we're 10 years away from having it fully integrated into the doing of business, and we'll still have 10 years of insane productivity increases.
I agree with you on that one.
Doesn't
Yeah,
need
I
to
think
be
that's
any
exactly
better.
right.
Well, the problems we're having is that it's not orchestrated. It's not in the workflow and process of the average business. But if you just took what we have and you properly integrated it, everybody would be doing 20 to 50% more efficient work.
Yeah, we
Now,
still have
what
2 years of just prompt engineering improvement to wreak out a bunch of benefits, let alone the orchestration. I think you're
and
totally
then
right on that.
getting the data sets connected, which really no one's done yet. There hasn't been time. And so, it's like, yes, it's true. They are experiencing a very interesting kind of law of diminishing returns on the way they're training. The post training is not really the part that's hard. It's the actual inference workload's not the hard part. They need energy for that, but the training workload has come to a point where they're getting less value for the amount of time they're putting in. Okay, great, but if I needed to incorporate a just copywriting, high-level copywriting constrained to my company's dynamic flow of information, I would need to build a RAG system that was taking in and thinking through all of my dynamic changing information. I would need a fine-tuning database that was constantly reclassifying and annotating things that were specific to my business to create my synthetic employee, not a generic synthetic employee, mine, trained to be mine. And then if I just had the level of AI that's available to me now with the agentic tools that have come out in the last 4 weeks, I'll be writing agents all day long. And I think my favorite term now is to dump all the jargon and just call it superautomation. Like, which workflow and which process would you super automate? Oh, if this just happened if I pressed a button, not the whole thing, that little workflow and process, that much, take that much and make it press a button. Now take this one over here and make that press a button. Oh, wait, now those are 2 press a buttons. Do they really work perfectly? Wonderful. Let's wire them together. There's years of that to be done.
There really is.
Years.
Hey, Shelly, who's
Go for it,
doing
Greg.
the super automation for marketers right now? Like, how is that happening? When you talk to CMOs, what do you tell them about that, or marketers?
Well, look, there are people doing a great job, and there are people doing an okay job. The group at Kellanova's killing it.
Killing it. We love Lulu. She's
Yeah,
the best.
she is
She is amazing. Yes.
all that in a bag of donuts. I mean,
she was maybe she was in the first 5 people we talked to on the podcast.
Exactly,
yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Agreed.
and so they are killing it. Ally Bank killing it. There's
Andrew's
love-
also,
yeah.
and then
Andrea-
also
Andrea
Satisha over
works-
there
has
has
a-
also been on the show.
She's got a great relationship with her CIO.
Yeah,
the way.
that's the key.
And so there are people out there doing it and doing it extremely well. And then look, there are big struggles right now because general counsels and risk managers are not taking the time to understand the technology, what they're doing, rightly so. I'm not saying it's not the right thing. So they're looking at the court dockets and they're looking at the amount of cases that are pending litigation, saying, you know what, our job isn't to win here. Our job is not to get sued. Like we just don't want to take the risk. Yeah. And so that is holding a lot of companies back. I would say more than half of our clients, the thing that's the stumbling block is not the technology, it's not the marketers, it's the risk management or it's not even security anymore. It's not even about data. It's just that there's enough pending litigation to scare the average general counsel. In fact, I was in a leadership meeting a few weeks ago, and the corporate general counsel brought in a super high power white shoe law firm consultant, from one of the really big law firms in New York. And that particular lawyer, an expert who is without question the best in the world at what they do, did a 10-minute PowerPoint that was filled with court cases that are pending right now, and that this particular lawyer felt If they went one way, it was good. If it went the other way, it was bad. And any one of them going bad would be too risky for this particular global organization. And the CEO said to me during the break, he said, Shelly, I appreciate what you do and I appreciate what you know. You have to understand, I hire my lawyers to tell me what to do and what not to do from a risk perspective. This is just too risky for us right now.
Do you think it's more risky not to do things? I mean, my litmus test is if I'm with a corporate meeting and they don't have an AI note taker because their lawyers told them they can't, I'm like, man, you guys are going to really be hurting. Should I short your stock now or later? Because if you don't, if you're not building your own content base,
So, Rex,
and you're not leveraging it.
No takers,
Rex,
no
those are two
takers are
different-
the bifurcation point. There we go. Okay.
Those
I
are
think-
two
I think
different
so.
things. Those are two different things. I can tell you right now that everybody who's not all in on this is on the wrong side of history, and that is a statement that is by default true. But I'm also going to say something that I believe is going to be relatively controversial. There is no first mover advantage here at all. There is an immense late mover advantage.
Why, Shelley?
This,
Be specific. Yeah.
because this is coming so fast. I have several case studies, which I will not share with anybody because they really throw clients under the bus. I have several case studies over the last 2 years where a CTO or a CMO and a CIO or CTO, either pair or triumvirate, has wanted to build a tech stack, has wanted to go deep. They have spent $3, $4, $5, $10 million doing so, and overnight, OpenAI adds a feature, rendering that entire $10 million moot. Like, it's as if Apple likes an app and then just decides to incorporate it into iOS. It's like you're out of business in one day. So now, if you're a startup, there's a lens marketers need to use. It's an old lens, and it's a lens people have forgotten. They shouldn't forget it. Is this a business or a feature?
Yeah, well, yeah, and so here's where I'll disagree with you a little bit, Shelley, which is that I agree with your is it a feature or is it a business question. But to me, it seems like what you should be doing is thinking very much like the microservice API approach, where everything that you do with AI really needs to be swappable to where you're like, okay, someone's feature
We're in
applies
violent
better
agreement.
than-
We're in violent agreement.
But I think culturally, if you aren't a first mover and trying to actually build the capability throughout your entire organization and every person in it, using AI, leaning into it, beginning to build your own corpus of data. And by the way, I don't trade stocks. So I was joke about shorting. My wife's a stockbroker, not me. But it's what I focus on is that if you aren't building a corpus of your own data, your own corporate information from your notes, from your emails, from your content, you're not getting people hands-on using it regularly, it's going to be really hard to compete in 18 months from now because there's such a big gap happening between the kind of the digital natives, the AI natives, and the not. What do you think about that?
To put a very fine point on this, I'm not telling you what I believe. I'm telling you what my clients believe. What we teach in our practice is what you just said, creating a culture of continuous adaptation where you are as adaptable as humanly possible. This is not change management. This is not transformation, digital transformation, or AI transformation. This is creating a culture of continuous adaptation. The tech is coming fast and furious. In our practice, what we try to teach and what we try to work with our clients to do is to understand that the tech will be coming fast and furious every single day, no matter what. It's going to come faster and more furiously. And this is a leadership problem, not a tech problem. So tech, you can rely on the tech exponentially improving. What you need to do as a leader, as a marketing leader, is really simple. You have to deal with with the middle management mafia's aversion to working more, to producing more for the same money. So when you teach somebody to do 5 hours worth of work in 5 minutes, which is where GPT-4o is right now, you throw a spreadsheet into GPT-4o and you say to it, what can I learn from this spreadsheet? And it will tell you, like a college professor, what you can learn. And then you say, okay, go ahead and do all of that. You don't even know what some of the things are unless you've taken stats and done it for a living. And then say, oh, by the way, I like graphs too. So could you make all the graphs and do it in SVG so I could throw it on the web? It's going to do all of that for you. That's a full afternoon's worth of work it's going to do in under 5 minutes. When you teach someone to do that in 5 minutes, in minute 6, they don't move on to the next project. They're only getting a year's worth of pay. They just did 5 hours worth of work in 5 minutes. They're going out for coffee. As a leader, you need to understand this and get the middle management mafia and the deep state motivated and properly incentivized and properly compensated for the new world in which they live. This is 100% a leadership issue. And to your point, which I could not agree more with, what you need to do is prepare your staff for what's coming to adapt to it at any moment. And I honestly hate to use military analogies because I feel like this is not life and death and people don't die, and in wars people do, and it's weird when we go target audience and we start using all these military terms. But the metaphor that fits the most is why are the Army Rangers or the Navy SEALs elite units? They're trained fighters. They're trained to fight. Well, we train all of our war fighters to fight. The difference is that the elite units are fully adaptable. When all of a sudden the night vision goggles don't work, they can still, they've trained for it. When all of a sudden it's pouring, they are trained for it. When it's like, it doesn't matter. They will adapt to and accomplish their goal. These units that are so well trained and trained to adapt, that's what they do. And we need to, as leaders, train our organization. Whatever is thrown at us, okay, this is the way we've been doing it for a while. This new thing is available. How does that get incorporated immediately into the workflow and process so that we can adapt and keep our margins on par with our peers and do that at a speed that is commensurate with the industry that you're in? Now, because otherwise, if you're judged on margin, if your productivity numbers are your metric, you're going to get decimated because what these tools do is they make you more productive. So they're going to make everybody more productive. The difference is going to be how good of a leader are you, how motivated is your team, how adaptable is your team. So creating this culture of continuous adaptation is the only way forward. And we have this thing, this flywheel, that first you set an eval, like what does 100 look like on your test? What's an A? Okay, now what data do you have? What data do you need? Like where are the gaps? Now data is the most important thing ever in the history of the world ever. Then what models and strategies am I going to deploy? Okay, I have my data. What foundational models, what strategies, how am I going to, is it a RAG database? Is it, what am I going to do for post-training? Which pre-trained models am I using? Then I'm going to build my product. I'm going to distribute it so that I can get some use data back. The feedback is the most important thing that could ever happen, right? I'm going to now get real feedback. I'm going to rewrite my eval and I'm going to start over. That never ends. That flywheel goes on forever. So if you're a marketer who uses waterfall or even agile workflows and you think it's got a beginning, middle, and ending, a rising action, a climax, and a falling action, and you're done, and a single budget, you're doomed. Like this is an ongoing adaptational reality forever. And it's hard. Like I got to tell you, leadership teams of any flavor are not set up that way because we've never needed to be set up that way. There's always been time. Which is why I said there's a late mover advantage now, because if you've gone through all of that kit-wise, tech-wise, you can get screwed. If you've gone through it leadership-wise, you can't get screwed.
That's a great point. Yeah, that's a great point.
So I mean,
Because
that's subtle.
so
Yeah.
it's subtle, and it's really important, I think, for listeners to appreciate that what Shelly's saying isn't you can be a late mover on adopting. You can't. You have to adopt now. You have to create that culture of adoption. But you can be a late mover on deciding that you're going to make a commitment to Anthropic or OpenAI or some of those those decisions, because you already have the culture and you can plug in what you need to plug in. And you're right. Every couple days, a new advance comes out. And I think the other point is that in your flywheel, you should be doing a microservice approach where when you think about the data that's coming in, especially when it hits the model, how can I swap between different models? How do I make that really? How do I have maximum optionality so that if Anthropic passes, right now is kind of the leader, but if O3 or O2 comes out and it passes it up, you want to be able to swap it out quickly.
More on that point. There are about 150 foundational models out there, and each one is subtly different. Some of them are redundant. It's different. They're either cheaper or they're specific to a vertical. You really want to be in a situation where you can choose the right tool for the job. To your point, and yeah, 100%. This is a people issue because every morning you wake up. Every morning I wake up. I don't know about anybody else. I used to read about 3 white papers a month, Rex. I think I'm reading 3 a week now. One I got last week. It was so complicated. I literally put it into GPT-4. I said, "Could you explain this to me like I'm a 5-year-old?" I didn't understand the math. I hardly understood the title. 3 of my friends sent me emails. 3 different people said, "You got to read this." I was like, "I don't even know what it is." I mean,
Good thing
and I
we've got
read,
AI to help us understand. what
but
you
I
say.
mean, honestly, that's the level of insanity that's going on right now. Some of this math is so advanced. Some of these concepts are so on the cusp, and they're going to profoundly change. They have the power to profoundly change in weeks as opposed to months or years. And that's the part that's new. Like when something comes out, we weren't supposed to see O3 for quite a while. It's still a large language model. It's just got agentic capabilities where it will break a problem up according to chain of thought and, quote, think through a problem. We've yet to see worldview models emerge. We've yet to see the large concept models emerge. We've seen the white papers. We've listened to the talks. We've listened to the lectures. We've seen little tiny demos. But this idea of the next level where there is actual conception and context built into the model as opposed to just calculating tokens. A lot of people feel like token calculation can only take you so far no matter how much compute you throw at it. Jan LeCun is famous for that. He's a chief scientist at Meta. You listen to him speak, he's going to tell you no. Jeff Hawking from the guy that founded Palm Pilot, he's got 2 books that in the last 10 years that I think it's 10 years. One was called On Intelligence, which was the first book he wrote that I read. And the one he just had called Thousand Brain Theory, which is amazing. And it's all the work he's done over the last 20 years trying to understand how to digitally map something that would mimic the cerebral cortex and the way that we start with these invariant models, and those invariant models become the basis of our worldview. So there are 2 different approaches, Jan LeCun and Jeff's, that are a completely different way of thinking about artificial intelligence and what might get us to AGI, which, as you know, and if people listening don't know, AI is the most promiscuous, hyper overused hype term in the world, only to be second only to AGI, which is undefined by everybody,
By no one.
and
Right.
no one agrees on the definition. Sam Altman says when it can do economically useful work. I'm going to tell you the reason that OpenAI isn't calling O3 AGI is because they'll lose their Microsoft deal when they do, because the terms of the deal between OpenAI and Microsoft end when OpenAI achieves artificial general intelligence. So that is, I think, why they're not calling O3 AGI. But I think you're not calling it AGI because it isn't.
It is, yeah.
Like human beings
What's
are
your
not.
definition?
Yeah.
My definition, if I had one, would be a tech stack that could transfer its knowledge between disciplines, which would more closely mimic a human's ability. So if I pour a pitcher of water into a glass and I learn to do that, literally a 3-year-old would understand that a coffee pot and a coffee cup, you pour the liquid from the coffee pot into the coffee cup. There's no large language model that will know that intrinsically. It can't be. So could you transfer that information and then, what happens with a bottle of water poured into a plastic sippy cup? Is it the same thing? And so every large language model can get a 178 on the LSATs and can't pass preschool. If it hasn't seen the pattern, it can't calculate the outcome. But an artificial general intelligence, an AGI, would be able to learn to do something. It recognizes faces. Now it can recognize music. Now the recognition becomes the skill, not recognizing a certain thing, but the ability to recognize. That would make you generally intelligent, to learn and transfer one idea to another. You can write your name with a pen. If I give you a pencil, it's a writing implement, right? And so if you look at the early robotics, the hardest thing for a robot to be programmed to do up until a year or so ago, it's still pretty hard, get a robot to sit in a car seat and put the key in the ignition.
Yeah. Well, have you watched Aloha, the work out of Stanford in that? I mean, they basically are having humans hand trained, but it takes like 50 tries just to teach it how to sweep a broom. I mean,
So
it's really, really slow and painful
we
right
are
now.
because whatever the process is by which we are assuming things learn, it's our approximation. So my definition of AGI would be when a tech stack an AI tech stack could learn something and apply that knowledge to something else. That's a pretty
With very, very few shots, right? Or zero shot type.
zero
like,
shot.
yeah,
It's
exactly.
like there's
Yeah,
plenty of
gotcha.
things. There are plenty of things.
That's a much higher bar than people are using, but I think that's probably a good bar.
No, but I
Hey,
mean, like,
Greg,
then why call it general intelligence? It's
yeah,
like
I
if
agree
it
with you.
recognizes
Yeah,
faces,
that's
it
right.
recognizes faces. If it makes art, it makes art. Like, I get it. And it can be great at it, but that doesn't make it AGI.
Yeah. Well, and
Right.
65 years ago, that was the definition, was that this anticipation that would be a zero-shot ability to learn and transfer knowledge. So I think that's a fair
By the way, when
definition.
I started my career as a composer producer. I play about an hour piano every day. I've been doing that since I'm 4 years old. My dad, who was a music educator and owned music stores. My mother and father were music teachers, and they owned music stores. When I was a kid, probably 4 years old, my father made a book for me together. This was my daily practice plan. It was 365. It's 365 pages long, and it's what you practice every morning. And every day you turn the page, and there's stuff to practice every day. I've been using this since I'm 4 years old, every day, and the days are numbered by whatever. I've gotten a little better over the 60 some odd years I've been playing piano. I've gotten a little better at the piano. I was said tongue firmly in cheek. But if I don't do that every day, then there's a dramatic loss of skill. And the old joke is, I don't practice one day, I know it. I don't practice 2 days, my wife knows it. I don't practice 3 days, the cat knows. Human beings have to continually hone their skills. And so it is reasonable to assume that AGI would need to consistently be trained. Consistently be trained to continue to improve. And that is my other definition, is that it would improve with practice. Not just learn, but actually improve with practice. Now, I don't see that anybody is anywhere near making that true. Here's the other part that's important. We don't need any of that.
Yeah, we don't.
We don't need
Marketers
any
don't
of
need
that.
that today. Yeah.
That is
You can get so much out of what you have today already.
This is engineering fantasy land, Rex. You know it is. Yes, we can get there, and then you can have like all the space robots and all that other stuff, and have C-3PO and have R2-D2 and have all that nonsense. We don't need any of it. We need task-based tools that can be wired together to accomplish goals, and we're going to get so far with that. So far. It will become more efficient when it can do more stuff. It'll also become a little less controllable.
Much less controllable. And it
Al-
doesn't need us as much when it makes that jump. Right now, it does really need us because we have to help think about the orchestration and the organization of what do we want it to do, and give it its goals at the minimum with agents or with workflows, give it its set of tasks and marching instructions, and then tune it. And as you said, that eval, I think I like your flywheel. That's a good way for people to think about what they need to be doing today, because most marketers don't really think deeply about writing evals. I mean, they barely understand the term unit tests, and this is really the next level of what we have to do in the software stack.
You know what's funny? There's engineers all know this. I think people know it too. It's a cliche. If you ask the wrong question, you're guaranteed to get the wrong answer. But this is really true, and much more true of large language models. We used to teach detailed prompt crafting. I wouldn't go as far as calling it prompt engineering, because most people are not engineers and can't really do prompt engineering, but they can do prompt crafting. They can be taught to write a better prompt. And then about 6 months ago, I would say to some, in our prompt crafting class, I would say to people, okay, and if you don't know how to articulate your request, ask the model how you could ask it. But then I came up with a prompt. Ask me clarifying questions until you're 95% sure you're going to accomplish the task effectively. And this solves everything. You don't need to learn to prompt engineer or prompt craft now. What you need to do is tell the model exactly who it's acting as, exactly, who the target audience is exactly. If you don't know how to describe the target audience, you say, I think my target audience is this, but ask me clarifying questions until you're 95% sure you're going to accomplish the goal I've assigned to you. It will now start asking you 20 questions. And you add that to the end of every prompt until it stops asking you questions. What that forces you to do is write a problem statement that is clear in your mind, clear in its little computer brain, and allows it to actually solve the problem that you didn't know how to articulate properly. right? So it literally makes you a better engineer. It makes you a better problem stater. So that's the prompt. Ask me clarifying questions until you're 95% sure you can accomplish the goal effectively. And you just keep asking it. And I think as people learn to articulate their problem sets better, we're going to see a lot better output. And I think every marketer that I'm working with, that in the old days we used to teach the difference between a data-driven question and a marketing question. A marketing question, why did sales go up or why did sales go down? Why is not a question you can ask a data set. That's a human narrative added to data. What's the last day I can sell a full-price barbecue grill until I have to mark it up, transship it, or send it back to the manufacturer? That is a data-driven question. Data will answer that question. But how many human beings who aren't merchants, who aren't statisticians, who aren't people who work with data all day long, how many people would know how to ask the questions that begin with what or how to get to the answer to the why question? Because you need a path to get to your why, but you can't ask why. But you can ask a large language model why, because it will hallucinate an answer for you. It'll give you a whole narrative, a whole story. It's read every brief in the history of like the internet. So it's going to give you all this like gibberish and it's going to look great. But you really need to learn how to talk to these models in a way that's going to give you what you want back. This is the new kind of data-driven thinking course for 2025, right? It's like, how do you get there as a marketer? And I think everyone's on this path, and there's no right way, but every one of us is on this like path to how do we best interface with these models? And look, that if it was easy, everyone would do it.
So if you were just to make a list of the things from CES that people should pay attention to the press, that they can sit here and listen to this and go look up on, sort of through Google or whatever, what are the things you tell them to go watch for from CES? What did you see there? Like, what are so you talked a little bit about, some of the camera dynamics and some of what's going on with Sony and Samsung. So what else? Just make a list, 60 seconds, then we're going to wrap up.
The salty spoon from Kieran.
Oh, okay. Yeah, heard about that. Yeah.
It tricks you into thinking your food is saltier than it is.
Yeah, huh? I thought it was very funny. Yeah. Anything smart?
The salty spoon from Kieran.
Oh, come on, Joe. There's got to be something else you saw that you thought.
There was very little kit that made me go, ooh. I was impressed with all of the e-bikes and e-scooters and how that business has evolved. The drones that were on display were pretty good. We're still very far from flying cars.
But what from marketers, though? I mean, you're right. I mean, listen, we're getting to self-driving cars finally. That's actually kind of interesting in the world.
Yeah,
broadly.
it's not. We're 50 years away from any of that mattering, and I can say that with tongue firmly in cheek. Oh, okay. It's not 50, it's 40, but it's not tomorrow, and it's not really going to be a thing. I think the thing that you learn at CES is that the future will unfold in however it unfolds, and we've never known, but if you can go now, I think, look at CES and say, if you're looking for a bright, shiny new object, you definitely are missing the point. Every single thing at CES was 1% better in every single metric. A little thinner, a little better battery life, a little better across every metric. And over time, that's that. What is the saying? You're 1% better every day. You're 37% better at the end of the year. Everything was 1% better at every metric, and this is exponential innovation. And don't think there was nothing at CES because I can't tell you a bright, shiny object. Understand that everybody is innovating 24 hours a day at a speed they've never innovated at before. And you have to use your own subject matter expertise, and you have to use your knowledge of your industry to understand deeply what those innovations, what the speed of that innovation will do to your business. Because if you're looking for one thing to say, oh, there's a new iPhone. No, there isn't. But the iPhone now has neural network capability in it, and it has agentic tools built into it. Like iOS 18.x and the 16 series phone, this phone is ready to go. So are you ready for it to go? Because when they decide to pull that trigger, you better be ready.
Oh, that you know what? I think that, Rex, I think that's an episode or two in its own right that we should just do, just instructional for the listeners.
We will definitely have Shelly back to talk more later on this year as we go through it. I think this has been a great conversation, Shelly. I really appreciate your time, your engagement in the industry, for really thinking about how to bridge the technology and marketing gap, and your clarity on helping people to really put leadership first. As you know, when you think about technology, we talk a lot about the technology, but it really is about the human leadership that you
humans.
bring to your organization. So thank you, Shelly.
Oh, my
Really
pleasure.
appreciate
Great to
it.
be with you guys. Thanks so much for having me.
So that's it for this episode of Decoding AI for Marketing. I'm Rex Briggs.
And I'm Greg Stewart. Be sure to catch all of our episodes, plus subscribe, follow, rate, and review in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, your favorite podcast app. You can find out more from Shelly, by the way, at shellypalmer.com if you want. If you want to get transcripts and more information on our website, decoding AI for marketing.com, and to learn more about MMA and membership options, go to MMAglobal.com. Thanks for listening, everybody.